Well, migration.
Yeah.
We got something happening at the southern border of the United States
Yeah.
that's got a little bit of talk, just a touch.
Yes.
370-page bipartisan bill comes out of the Senate to address immigration,
Hmm.
and also kind of tied in Ukraine and Israel, Gaza, but focusing just on immigration. 370 pages is a lot to go through. Can you give us just an overview of what that committee was trying to accomplish in terms of making changes to the current immigration practice so that it would improve the border situation?
Yeah. So what does the bill do first off?
Yep.
I guess the first thing to mention is it's actually not just purely an immigration bill. It's what's called omnibus legislation, which is where you're going to lump a bunch of different things together that are
Mhm.
seemingly unrelated. So there is a lot of funding that goes to border enforcement. So that may include building physical infrastructure,
Right.
such as a wall or something else, as well as we want more border patrol
Right.
agents, ICE officers, whatever. Um, there's also funding though that goes to Ukraine.
Yep.
There's humanitarian aid that goes to to Gaza,
Right.
and then there's aid to Ukraine as well. So all this gets
Right.
lumped into the same bill. On the immigration side of things, though, so we mentioned border enforcement. Um, it's also giving it would give the president the authority to shut down the border. I believe the number is if undocumented flows or the
Yeah.
if people moving in exceed 5,000 is the number I saw
And it was like a
in a day.
weekly average or some,
I
it was
heard a
some weird
day, maybe I've
moving
got a
number. Yeah. Yeah.
but, there's some threshold
Yeah.
though, and then
Right.
the president can step in and essentially shut down the border, which what does shut down the border mean? It means we're not going to grant asylum to
Mhm.
anyone. What's asylum? Asylum is you're going to allow someone to come into the country that is literally kind of fleeing for their life, where
Right.
if you turn this person away, it's going to risk their life. So these are
Yeah.
people fleeing religious persecution, political persecution, civil war, abject poverty. People have different definitions in
Yeah.
terms of what makes a refugee,
Right.
what makes a like who should be granted asylum and who should not be. But the general spirit of it is it's kind of a humanitarian
Right.
way for letting in migrants. Um, according to international law and according to our own laws right now, everyone has the right to seek asylum.
Mhm.
You can deny someone asylum, and that is up to national governments and
Right.
courts.
Right.
But everyone has the right to seek asylum, and in that way, it's kind of a human right.
Mhm.
And that's in part what this policy would change, because if it hits 5,000 in a given week or day or
Right.
whatever that threshold is, no more asylum. It doesn't matter if you qualify or not. And the objective or the goals of that policy were twofold, actually. So first, if you just ramp up border enforcement, it's like fixing a leak in the faucet or in the sink. It's
Right.
just you physically stop more people from
Yeah.
moving to the United States. The problem though is you can't do that. It doesn't matter how much money you throw at the border, migrants will find a way to get in.
Right.
So the primary objective was not actually to stop people; it was to deter people.
Right.
If we puff out our chest enough and we sort of show, look, if you choose to migrate into the U.S. as an undocumented worker, you're going to have to climb 3 different walls, and you're going to get caught. You're going to
Yeah.
be punished for it. You'll be banned from seeking asylum for X amount of years. It's not worth your while. The hope is to almost kind of deter and prevent people from migrating in the first place. So you don't
Right.
even have to catch them. In other words, now, did that policy work? No, I think like it's the evidence is pretty clear because I mean we're still having this debate today, right?
Yeah.
And why doesn't deterrence work? Um, you kind of have to understand what motivates people, and it's going to sound like I'm going off topic, but this will be clear in a second. I'm a big mixed martial arts fan. I watch the UFC and all that
Yeah. Yeah.
every weekend, and there's the former heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou. He's actually a native of Cameroon,
Mhm.
and he started his combat sports career boxing in France, I believe. And he migrated as an undocumented, individual across the sub-Saharan Africa continent and then across the Mediterranean into Europe. And I always tell students and I tell people I
Yeah.
talk to, go and listen to what his journey was like.
Right.
Listen to all the obstacles, which if you do listen to it, it's honest, like literally unbelievable. It's like I can't believe that this is even a thing. And then come back to me and tell me honestly, do you think a border wall is going to stop someone like Francis Ngannou?
Right.
And it's not. I mean, for someone like Francis Ngannou, and there are literally millions of other Francis Ngannous, they are moving because sometimes it's a life or death decision. They're moving to better their life, their
Right.
family's lives, their friends' whatever. And the ramping up border enforcement doesn't do anything to address those motives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, we've got tons of survey data too to show that, you could tell or ask migrants, like, are you aware of increased border enforcement? They'll say yes. And then they'll ask them, is this going to deter you? They say no, because you know what? It's not even a choice.
Right.
I got to get to the US because I'm running for my life. I mean, Francis Ngannou even described this as it wasn't a choice. I had no choice. I had to go.
What would be an immigration policy that, in your opinion, that Republicans would support? Because it's this finger pointing. It's your problem. It's your problem. But okay, now it's their turn. They have a chance to make changes and fix the border in their mind. What would they do?
So, two things to say here. The first is, I actually don't think there is a lot of partisan difference on immigration.
Really?
Now, I understand there.
Yeah.
You've got this part of the Republican Party that is very much, defend the border and whatnot.
Right.
I know this is the Trump stance, but I actually think Democrats are just as averse to immigration as well, because again, we go back to voters. Both parties have to respond to what voters want or don't want.
Right.
And I just think immigration policy, I mean, people generally do not want to accept more migrants. They either want to keep things the same or they actually want to close the borders further.
Yeah.
Okay, that said though, how would I get Republicans, Democrats, everyone on board?
Right.
I have my own little solution here. This isn't just my idea, but you do have people, including the Trump administration, actually proposed what's called a point system.
Mm-hmm.
So the way point systems work, this is the way Australia does it. This is the way New Zealand does it, a couple other countries, where in order to allow someone into the country, they have to accumulate a certain number of points.
Right.
And how you get points is maybe you need to be able to be proficient in English.
Right.
You need to have a job in place already. You could assign points however you want. I mean, there's some countries that literally do it. If you live or win an Olympic gold medal, you get like some absurd amount of points.
There you
right.
go.
So you could do it however you want. And in truth, I think point systems are not radically different from the way we do things now. But the advantage about point systems is I think you could sell it to voters.
Right.
Because you're selling it at least as kind of like a
Meritocracy.
Yeah, like it's a merit-based way of letting people in.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's not necessarily true. I can make arguments about why point systems could be manipulated and whatnot, but I'm just thinking from the perspective, if I was running for office and I needed to sell my policy to voters, I think point systems is one way to do it.
Yeah.
And Trump's come out and tried to say this himself, that point systems might be the way to go. So maybe that's the answer, is not just opening immigration policy, but trying to kind of alter how, like, who we're letting in and the types of migrants we let in. And there's a whole debate with that too, but that's at least one idea and a way to maybe get some compromise and to make this a politically viable solution.
You looking like 5, 10, 20 years out, and you look at the demographics of this country, birth rates, are low. We may even have a declining population, which would then lead one to believe that immigration could be something very beneficial.
Yeah.
Is there any talk or any forward thinking on that, or is it just everything is in the moment? Get to the next I got to get through the next election. I mean, what's going on there in your mind?
Well, I think I think there's, like, unequivocal answers that come out of academia and a lot of, like, the
Yes.
econ literature shows that, there's a lot of good that comes from migration,
Mhm.
even undocumented migration, but just immigration in general. And a lot of the supposed costs to immigration are not maybe there at all, or they're a lot less than
Right, right.
people think. So I would say a majority of economists, and this is a little bit out of my wheelhouse because I'm not an economist,
Right.
but I had to teach this stuff last semester for my migration class, and so
Right,
I've
right.
read a lot of these papers that are just digging into the data, and I think the consensus is that immigration is like a potential boon to the economy. And you
Right.
mentioned the aging
Yeah.
population of the U.S., the demographic deficit that we have of let's take like Social Security for
Right.
instance. You know, how are we going to pay for the baby boomers and the aging population if
Hello.
we don't have a lot of young workers
Come
anymore,
on
right?
in, guys.
Yeah. So you bring in people that are young, healthy, working, you get them
Right.
citizenship so
Yeah.
that they're getting
Yeah.
into jobs and they're paying taxes, and then you use that tax money to fix the problem of Social Security being bankrupt. I mean, that's one example of
Oh,
immigration
yeah.
being potential
I was
good thing.
I was talking with Nicholas Patillo, our director of international education, and he was talking about the economic impact that international students have. And it's like across the U.S., it's in the billions, and just Arkansas alone was $140 million
Mm,
that they bring with tuition, room and board, shopping it within the local
right.
market, and so that's just one small sliver as far as that. Because you think about many many people that are not here legally. They chances are they're not paying into the taxes like so all
Right.
that tax revenue is just not there. And
Right.
uh, so wouldn't there be a net benefit? Now, of course, that's all academic, and then you get into the emotion, I guess, and that's when
Yeah.
everything kind
And
of blows up.
I think
Yeah,
the media probably plays a role here too,
you bet. Yeah.
in that I teach this to my students all the time. It's like it's a much like it's a much like more trendy, provocative title of an article to say invasion, like migration invasion, and to talk about to basically
Caravans.
like
Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
into people's like fears and anxieties, you kind of stoke that stuff versus no one's going to publish in the front page of a newspaper migrants contributing positively to the economy. It's like non-news
Right.
almost.
Right.
And that is the thing about the way media reports things. They do it because they want to get viewers. So I don't blame
Yeah.
them. But oftentimes, good news is not like or good things that happen doesn't make good news. Oftentimes, the bad news and the stuff that people pick up and read is like again invasions and
Yeah.
all this bad stuff. So I think for that reason, a lot of voters, a lot of policymakers, they just have an altered perception of the true effects of immigration.